Treating any single cloud provider as your permanent source of truth is a structural risk. Outages happen, pricing models might change overnight, and accounts usually do get locked. If your data doesn't exist in two separate ecosystems, or better yet, three, it doesn't really exist. Today, we're going to be using rclone to build a true cloud-agnostic data replication script, because your infrastructure shouldn't be held hostage by a single vendor. I'm going to show you my actual production bucket that I host on Cloudflare R2. And this does have actual production data from my users. And I want to safely back this up and make sure that it exists somewhere else. Preferably out of Cloudflare ecosystem. And to do that, we can leverage something called rclone. Let's go ahead and run a quick test. So I do here have this jury production bucket that I would love to back up. And in order to access it from my server, I would first need some credentials. So let's go ahead and navigate to R2 Object Storage and create a new API token. From here, I can create a user API token, and I will call it something like rclone sync replication. And I would like to give it the ability to read only. So I would not want to modify my source of truth in any way. So yeah, and I would only like to give it access to my actual production data. Let's go ahead and create a new user API token. As you can see, it generated a bunch of new tokens. There's the token value, access key ID, and secret access key. And I'm going to use the access key ID and secret access key primarily because rclone uses the S3 compatible endpoints for Cloudflare instead of using the Cloudflare API. So to do that, all I need to do is start copying these fields and configure a new rclone remote. So let's go ahead and click copy and go to our server, do rclone config. And in here, you can select a new remote. And I'm going to call it R2 source, or R2 production. And in here, I have a variety of options to use for my provider. But what I'm going to use is a Amazon S3 compliant storage provider. And as you can see in here, Cloudflare is one of the options. So that is going to be 5. And again, Cloudflare R2 storage, so 5 again. And let's enter AWS credentials in the next step. So let's paste in our access key ID. And then we also need the secret access key. And we can copy that directly from here. And then keep it on auto. And finally, we're going to need the endpoint. So let's go ahead and use this endpoint. And yeah, that's fine for me. I'm just going to leave it as the default. I don't need to go ahead and edit advanced config. So let's do that and keep this remote. So as you can see here, we have now set up a new remote called R2 production. And what we can do is we can actually see if we have managed to set up that correctly by doing rclone lst, which will list directories in R2 production. And we're going to notice something. When we do this, it's going to say access denied, and that is because we only gave it permission to access the jury production bucket. So we need to specify that first. As you can see, it has listed the actual directories. We can also go ahead and list the entire bucket as a tree. So to do that, we just do rclone tree and give it the remote. And this is the entire production tree right here. Let's go ahead and try to sync locally. All right, I'm going to create a directory here underneath simple backups called R2 production. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do rclone sync, and I'm going to sync my R2 production jury production bucket to root symbol backups R2 production. I'm going to do -P, which is going to show us the progress of this sync command. As you can see, it's currently transferring some files. And now we can do ls R2 production. And we have the same users directory that was there. We can also do R2 production and users, and we can see that we have the same tree. And what happens now is that whenever we run this command again, we're not actually going to sync anything because the data on our source remote hasn't changed. And this is really nice because this means we never do unnecessary reads and writes to our remote unless we absolutely need to, and unless our data locally or on our destination remote has changed. So let's go ahead and sync to an actual remote, and I'm going to select Backblaze as my data replica cloud provider. From Cloudflare, we can go ahead and create a bucket, and what we can do is call it something unique. I'm going to call it jury replica, and in here we can create a new bucket, and we can create a new app key for this bucket. So let's go ahead and do that. Add a new application key. I'm going to call it rclone sync, and I'm only going to give it access to our jury replica. I'm going to give it actually read and write access because we're going to need to see if these files exist on this bucket. We need to sometimes override them, and we sometimes need to delete them. So this is what we actually need. I'm just going to create a new key. We can go back to our terminal, do rclone config, and from here we can create a new remote. And I'm going to call it B2 replica. And in this list, we're going to search for packlist B2. Let's go ahead and enter an account ID, which we can get from here. And then the application key. And do we want hard delete or do we not? Actually, I'm not going to hard delete files for now. I'm going to need to check them later because I would like to be able to restore some of the files that might be deleted that I might need later on. So I'm going to keep this as false. And then we don't need to enter into advanced configuration. And we can keep this. Now let's quit and run the sync command again. But now what we can do is we can change our destination from our local storage here to the Backblaze storage that we just set up. So to do that, I'm going to call it, I think it was called B2 replica, and inside of it, I think it was the bucket that we created was called jury replica. Let's go ahead and actually run that. And as you have noticed, I forgot to add the -P command, which shows us progress for this sync operation. But I have a feeling that this has went successfully because we don't have any errors. Let's go ahead, browse some files. As you can see here, we have now successfully synced from our R2 storage bucket to our Backblaze bucket. We can do that again with the -P command, and we can see the progress. Actually, it's going to check some files for existence. I'll see that there's no files missing in here whatsoever, which is really nice. We can actually go ahead and test this. I'm going to delete a few files in here. Once these files are deleted, you can run it again and see that these files will be missing from our P2 replica. So it'll attempt to transfer them exactly like this. So let's go ahead and create this bash script in this simple backups directory. I'm going to call this bash script something like simple backups storage replication .sh. And in here, we'll first start by setting our environment to use bash by using the shebang user bin environment bash. Then what we can do is we can do a set-euo pipe fail. And what this basically will do is it will error out basically anything. It'll cascade the script from continue running in the future. Or not in the future, but I mean, it won't run the subsequent commands if any of the commands fails. And it will warn me if there's any unset variables that I've used, which is really nice if you do usually run into typos. And then -o pipe fail will actually make it so that if you use a pipe in your commands and any of these commands failed, the entire pipe will fail, and that will also exit your command. Now we can start configuring our backup and variables. And what we can do is I'm going to create 3 variables because I want to sync this locally. I also want to sync this remotely on my P2 storage. First, create the variables for the remote and my local storage path. I'm going to call this source. And then our P2 destination, P2 replica. And then my actual local path, and then I'll just call it something like replica in here. And now we've created these variables. So in here, we can do just a simple echo out and checking storage states and initiating sync, something like this. This is really nice. Then we can just run our own sync. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first sync it locally, and then we can sync it to P2 or your remote destination storage. And what would actually be nice here is instead of call it R2 source, you can just call it remote source and remote destination, something like this. This is easier to read. Yeah, let's do arclone sync, and then it's as easy as just doing remote source. And first I'm going to run local dest, which is local destination. And let's do a new line because it's easier to read this way. We're going to use a few flags in here, which makes this script production ready. And this basically makes fewer API calls to the remote storages in order to achieve or in order to list all of the files that need to be synced. This is really nice if you want to make fewer API calls. Checksum and update. And what this does is instead of blindly overwriting data, arclone would first check for the checksum for all of the files, and if any of the checksums have changed, it will update that file's checksum, which is really nice. We can do stats 5s stats 19, and this ensures that when we hook this up to cron later, our system logs stay perfectly clean, printing a concise progress update every 5 seconds instead of spamming thousands of lines of output. Then finally, we can do something like sync completed successfully. And now let's make our bash file executable like this and just run it. And as you can see, that -u flag code this inbound variable. Local destination. I definitely misspelled something there. Let's go ahead and fix it. And it's actually giving me the exact line, which is really nice. And yeah, let's go ahead and run this again. And now we can run it. And it says sync completed successfully. If you notice, I have forgotten to log something out in here. And that is because we need -- log level info. So we need everything at info to be logged out. Now let's do one more run. And here we have it. We have now all of that information right at our hand. Now let's edit this backup one more time. Make sure to also run this command to our remote destination. Then we can echo out, and I sync to remote destination completed successfully. And let's run it again. Again, it caught the unbound variable in line 21. There was been a typo. Let's go ahead and fix it. Run it one more time. All we need to do now is automate this. And to do that, all we need to do is just add it to our cron tab directory. And to do that, you can do cron tab -e. And then in here, we can just create a new cron entry. I'm just going to call it, or I'm just going to run it every day at 2 a.m. So 0, 1, and then every day of the month, every month, and every day of the week. And then the actual command is going to be root symbol backups. And I think it was called something like, yeah, storage replication, like this. And then we can redirect all of our output to var log our clone sync.log and redirect the errors as well, which is std error, standard error, to standard out, like this. And that's it. We've installed our new cron tab. This job was basically run every day at 2 a.m., making sure that our source remote is always backed up both locally and on a destination remote.